The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus said to his disciples, "To you who hear I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. To the person who strikes you on one cheek, offer the other one as well. And from the person who takes your cloak, do not withhold even your tunic. Give to everyone who asks of you, and from the one who takes what is yours, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. For if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do the same. If you lend money to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners and get back the same amount. But rather love your enemies and do good to them, and lend expecting nothing back, and your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, for he himself is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Stop judging, and you will not be judged. Stop condemning, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and gifts will be given to you. As good measure, packed together, shaken down, and overflowing, will be poured into your lap. For the measure with which you measure will in turn be measured out to you." The Gospel of the Lord.
In this reading from Luke chapter 6, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. It's a hard reading, but it's also the good news. It really is the good news. But the hard part of it is love your enemies. We're called to love our enemies, and that's really hard to do. That's really tough to do. It's our human inclination is definitely not to love our enemies. Quite frankly, I don't know if I want to love my enemies. But yet God is calling us to do just that. And it's totally countercultural. It's against the human instinct, but it's against the way our culture, we see the way our culture is going. It's hit them back, get them, defend yourself, and you have your rights, and, get back at them, and do violence. We're getting to be more and more of a violent country. It's kind of a strange thing. Especially, you see those signs, tolerance, and that's totally out the window. Totally out the window, tolerance. And so it's very difficult to live this out because our human instincts, and then we got the world that tells us a very different story. And to know that this is still what God calls us to do, to love our enemies. To love our enemies. And really when it comes down to it, there's a logic the way Jesus is thinking. There's a logic to it. Even sinners love those who love them. That's true. Even sinners love those. The pagans love those who love them. What's so special about it? See, we have to be reminded that as Catholics and as Christians, we're not called to be like everybody else, to do what everybody else does and to be ordinary. God calls us to greatness. God calls us to be holy. Therefore, we love our enemies because that's the stuff that makes us stand out. God calls us to be a light to the world. We're all called to be a light to the world and the salt of the earth. We love those readings. But if we just love those who love us, we're not being a light to the world. You cannot be a light to the world if you're not doing something extraordinary, like loving your enemy. And therefore, we have to love our enemy. And Jesus doesn't ask us to do something that he didn't do. I kind of find it interesting about this in here. The person who strikes you on one cheek, offer the other as well. Jesus was struck on the cheek. They plucked his beard. He gave the other side. They cast lots for his robes. To everyone who asks, from the person who takes your cloak, do not withhold even your tunic. They cast lots for his robes. He did it. Remind ourselves that God was merciful to us before we were able to even turn back to God and seek his mercy. 2,000 years ago, he was willing to die on the cross for us, even though there was no expectation of return. Because God is perfect in and of himself. He doesn't need us. He wants us. He doesn't benefit from anything we do. Yet he was willing to die on the cross for us. How awesome our God is that he was willing to do so much to love us and to be that mercy for us ourselves. So God calls us out to be that image of his very self. To love with that heroic love, not the ordinary love. That love that shines out before the world, that gives people hope, that gave us hope from the one who died on the cross for us, that continues to give us hope. And so God is calling us to be that image of hope for others and of love. And so he wants us to be merciful, to love our enemies and to do good for them, to will the good for them, and expect nothing back. Now, it's interesting here, a lot of times when we look at this reading, we hear the reading, stop judging, stop condemning, forgive. It's kind of funny about that because the sentence actually says, stop judging and you will not be judged. But all we hear is stop judging, like somebody's pointing the finger out. Oh, you're judging, you're being mean, and all this. I was like, oh yeah, now I got to go to confession. Oh, why do I have to confess the sins all over again? We get frustrated and everything, and we feel guilty and all this other stuff, and nothing changes. It's because we only hear the first two words, and we don't hear the rest of the story. Stop forgiving, and you will not be judged. You see, God is making a promise to us. If you carry out those virtues, he will not judge you. And he's not talking about like in this life. Oh, you will not be judged today. Well, that's nice. That's great. But I know tomorrow I'm going to sin too. And he's going to extend that the next day and the next day. No, see, Jesus is extending this for the eternal judgment when we die. This is the promise that Jesus gave us. Stop judging, and you will not be judged. If you do this, I will not judge you. Stop condemning. If you do not condemn, I will not condemn you. I will give you the graces of heaven. You will see me in heaven. This is my promise to you. Forgive, and I will forgive you. This is the promise of Jesus. That's a very different way of looking at it. I don't know about you, but I'm a whole lot more motivated when I know I got the promise of Jesus Christ, the one who was willing to die on the cross for me. I know he is willing to fulfill that promise. And so I get to know and I get to think, if I do this, what an awesome thing. He will give me many gifts. Give and give. Gifts will be given to you. See, if we're generous, if we're merciful, God will shower us with so many graces. Give and gifts will be given to you. A good measure, packed together, shaken down, overflowing, and poured into your lap. And this is the promise of eternity when we die. It's not a promise of the gospel of prosperity. It is what we will receive as our inheritance for eternity, not just for a day or two. And that is greater. And so this is our promise, that we would receive those graces packed down. This is the promise of heaven. See, a lot of times, we are not very motivated to get to heaven. You know, we got this picture of heaven as angels floating around, playing the harp. Oh, that's nice. Those cute angels and all this other stuff. That's nice. No. See, what Jesus is trying to offer you in the vision of heaven, what heaven is going to be like, is not going to be angels floating around. Picture this. This is going to be what heaven is like. Imagine you die on earth, and you're going to go into heaven. And the first person you see in heaven is the person who did all the nasty things to you. And they're going to be smiling at you. And they're going to be saying, thank you. Thank you for being merciful to me. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for praying for me and to get into heaven. Come and experience the love of the Father. Come and experience the love of His Son. Come, I want to introduce to you Jesus Christ. How He loved us. Thank you. Thank you so much for loving me, even though I did all those nasty things to you. That is a vision of heaven, where all of humanity is brought back together and made whole, where we love each other truly from the heart, making all things right and whole. That desire that we have deep in our hearts, every single one of us, we will receive that joy of God in heaven. What an awesome thing. And that is waiting for us if we're willing to love with that heroic love. That love that nobody else does, that love that only God can help us with loving. What an awesome thing. This is our God. This is the love waiting for us. If we're willing to hold fast to that truth and to love as Jesus Christ has loved us.